this edition of the Men's Divorce Podcast, sponsored by domestic litigation firm Cordell Cordell, a partner men can count on. I'm your host, Dan Pierce, mensdivorce.com online editor, and I am joined by
Scott Trout
and Erica Ottolini.
On today's show, we are discussing mental health. So oftentimes, the struggles and emotions that men go through before, during, and after the divorce experience are not talked about, and especially fathers who have to deal with being away from their children. And with Father's Day quickly approaching, we thought it'd be a good idea for listeners to better understand the emotional tapestry that men have to go through during this time, with all of this. It's so different with each individual experiencing it. But from a general perspective, what are some of the emotional dangers men have to navigate beginning the divorce experience as it's starting out or before with all of the marital problems that might ensue?
I think the experience shows that, and I always tell clients in these seminars that we do around the country, that to try to make decisions without emotional impact, without using the emotional impact of the divorce. I mean, because every decision has a consequence. And so some of the things that guys face is they want to react to what's going on around them. And they have to, in some respects, we have to kind of step back and try to use our logic. And that is the first thing that goes out the window. And not intentionally, it just is a result of probably one of the most stressful periods other than death and taxes is divorce or even modification or any family law action. You're about ready, or you feel like you're about ready to lose everything. And so, it's a fight or flight kind of, thought process. And so some of these decisions are purely emotional. And that's part of our job, and we can certainly talk about that later, is to try to ground them again, get them back to making really informed, logical decisions. But that's really kind of the landscape that guys really, they walk in the door and they're in an emotionally distressed period. So that's what we see immediately. It's kind of what guys are going to face, and maybe it's unexpected for them. They're men, right? They're supposed to be unemotional and they can handle anything. And reality is that they're more likely and susceptible to issues than women perhaps are. Some of the studies suggest that.
Absolutely.
Yes. And to just piggyback on what you just shared, Scott, about the emotional landscape, so much of what we do when we react is we're operating from that emotional side of the brain where we're getting triggered. Our fight, flight, or even freeze mechanism is switched. That switch has been flipped. And when we can gain a better understanding of that process, then we can help our clients really access the thinking part of their brain again. And I think men are in a challenging position because they've really historically been allowed to express one emotion, anger, and we are all feeling beings. And when we suppress all the other stuff, we encounter problems. And it could be that was a function of the relationship that fell apart. And what we want to do is be able to help people express the, myriad emotions that they're experiencing, whether it's frustration, betrayal, fear. I mean, all of that can be playing a role into, why they're deciding the things that they're deciding. And so I think, in our work, we do a lot of psychoeducation in both realms about emotions and experiences and when to make a decision and when not to make a decision. And I think that is probably the platform where you start with any client.
Okay, cool. With all of these different mental health risks that might come up with, like depression being so prevalent, suicide rates for divorced men being so high in comparison to divorced women. What are some of the consequences of experiencing these types of conditions like depression, like stress, like avoiding seeking the mental help that they need? Because so often there's an ideal out there that mental health, seeking it is gendered. Mm-hmm. Men often attribute seeking help as, a sign of weakness or stress, right, rather than, seeking medical attention. Mm-hmm. So I guess what are some of the consequences of following that line of thinking? Because it can be dangerous.
Right. Well, you're probably on the front line of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's interesting. So obviously with guys, they tend to suppress feelings, emotions, or they either come one side or the other. They're either going to be an emotional wreck or they're very, very logical or at least they think they are in that decision. And it is based upon something, hurt, anger, whatever it may be. And so the danger, and you see, and the consequences are we always encourage them, look, you've either got to go find someone you can talk to. And interestingly, our seminars, I almost think that we do around the country, the 10 stupidest mistakes or men's divorce school that we do in the evenings, I almost think they're more therapeutic than they are educational, because they're surrounded by guys who all went through the same or similar thing. And it oftentimes becomes where we see guys who've gone through the process, they have no legitimate reason to be there other than to be around guys who've gone through what they go through. And they seem to walk out in a much better place than they were before they walked in. And so we try to encourage guys to do something like that. Find an avenue of where you can kind of talk about it. You have to talk about your feelings because guys are brought up, or maybe most of them, even as young kids, don't express your feelings because you're a man, right? Don't cry. It is suggested, you can be angered or controlling. But the consequence of not doing that is, sure, drastic. We don't see the after result often, but we see guys who bottle it up during it. And so it is something we encourage, is to get to a point where you can have that conversation and express your feelings. Surround yourself with others, almost like going to an AA meeting, because that is part of it, is being surrounded by people who understand what you're going through. And that's why I feel like our seminars are therapeutic. And I was telling my wife about, we're attorneys, but the word counselor is in there. We're really not a psychological counselor, but in some respects, I feel like we have that role. We have to transition them on to someone who can help them in a way, and we have to have empathy and try to encourage them to get away from the law side and the strategic decisions they make in divorce, and to get that mental health, because keeping that bottled up is not healthy in any way. So you can do it during, before, after, but again, it is about seeking to surround yourself with people who are familiar and understand.
Exactly. And I think that you're talking about the front lines of therapy. Really, you are the first counselor they will see. And whether or not they're willing to go the next step to mental health, I think can be, I so appreciate this collaboration between the two disciplines of mental health and legal, because, you're in a position to educate people about the acceptability of mental health support. And I like to call it, mental wellness support. We all need a place to put these feelings and process these emotions. What we say in my line of work is that one of two things will happen. We all have emotions, and if we don't take the time within our minds or within a safe place, in therapy maybe, to process them, you will either have somatic issues, migraines, ulcers, etc., or you will have irritable and angry outbursts. So you'll have behavioral issues. And I would think that if you were committed to kind of learning about yourself and maybe learning from past, you don't even have to call them mistakes, but learning from past experiences so you don't have to keep recreating the same one, that we can help people kind of migrate their way into support of some kind. And I think one of the greatest things that people get from that, mental wellness is normalization, like you were just talking about. This is a normal experience. Over 50% of couples are going through something familiar, something similar to this. And so to have somebody feel like, when they know in their mind that they're the only one who could possibly be feeling what they're feeling, to have that be normalized is very powerful.
And the easiest decision is the hardest one, and that is just to seek help. And I guess maybe perhaps the word help in and of itself is a tough word. Seek an outlet. Just have a conversation. And gosh, in any respect, it can be, if you've experienced death in a family, just talking about it with friends, going out. That's where you say, I need to go out, because you just want to seek companionship, friendship, so maybe someone just can listen. And that's really the consequences of not doing that are probably drastic.
Absolutely. And one thing we see, between men's divorce, dad's divorce, on social media is the creation of a community of men seeking that type of help, and it's definitely benefited a lot of them through seeking the resources that we provide here and such. But in terms of like the gendered idea of not seeking the help or support. What is a lawyer to do with a client that won't help himself?
I mean, you have it a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a client who comes in and they can handle it. I've got it. Or they may have a mental disorder, and you've got to explain to them. Our job is to explain to them that the steps that they need to get that outlet are only served to help them in their case. And we try to counsel them from the perspective of what's the judge going to look at and what's the judge going to think. And put aside the fact that let's just agree you don't. And we'll agree with the client. Say, okay, you don't need help, but let me just improve your case's chances by having you get this X, Y, or Z, and we'll break it down as simply as a gambling issue or an alcohol issue, where I sit down with clients and say, look, I'm not telling you you're an alcoholic or you're a gambling addict, but let's get yourself to a place where, from a judge's perspective, they look at you like you're helping yourself. You're trying to get a better understanding, educate, just like you would research everything related to divorce on dadsdivorce.com. You're going to gather the information on what leads to, from results from gambling, excessive gambling, or financial mismanagement. I'm not trying to label someone, but what we're trying to do is put them in a position that gets them in a better position to accomplish their goals. And so from our perspective, it is about trying to deal with clients and explain to them the consequences of what judges look for. And that is our job. But again, it's not about labeling. It's not about, and I hate the word help because it does come with connotations that you've got a problem. And so it doesn't mean you have a problem. It just means we want to better ourselves and better the client. And you got to go through, you're going through such a horrible time. It's costly, it's tolling. And so for us, that's what we try to do, is to explain the consequences. Sometimes there are none. And, we'll often say, look, you need to consider this when it's over. But 98% of the time, we're telling clients to take certain steps, whatever that may be, learn how to be a better parent. Get better tools on how to deal with children who are facing divorce, because you may not see it right away, but you will. Imagine, I'm not being a product of divorce, but I can't imagine as a child going back and forth and having to figure out what they're going through and what they're thinking. And those are the things that we try to impress upon clients, to just get better education, better resources on how to manage now and in the future.
And I think, inviting somebody to get more information about something is a wonderful access point. It's a launch pad. If you were, recovering from, let's say, orthopedic surgery, you would go for physical therapy. If you wanted to learn an instrument, you would hire a tutor, or, et cetera. You would hire someone who had information that you wanted. And so when I do co-parenting work, or even individual work with either dads or the other parents, this information could be reframed as coaching. This is life coaching. We all want information about how we operate. We didn't come with an owner's manual. And so insight-oriented work in particular has us uncover why we do what we do, why we feel the way we feel, why our triggers are where they are. And so that in and of itself can be enticing to learn. And again, will help you be a better parent, a better partner, a better friend.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to learn how to parent with someone who's not in your household and you're not together anymore. I mean, it's like having a newborn. No one teaches you how to parent, right? And so now you finally learn, and then you get divorced. You have to learn all over again.
Exactly.
I mean, with a whole new host of problems.
Absolutely.
And so, again, it is about education. That's why I think the resources on Dad's Divorce are awesome, because just read and consume. We are a consumer-based, society now. We consume as much information as we can. But again, the stigmatism with guys, or the stereotype is, oh, we're good. I got it. And I think that's where they really should get more. And certainly they're going to present far better in court when they are educated, informed, and have a plan in place on how to deal with and co-parent in the future.
And I think we can begin to kind of transfer this idea of, being open to insight, taking that from a point of vulnerability to a point of strength.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It helps. It transfers the language. It makes it more palatable for guys to kind of consume and admit that they're not necessarily getting better. They're getting stronger.
Exactly.
They're getting
more informed.
They're gaining more knowledge and are better equipped to the task at hand in their custody fight, their divorce case, whatever it might be. There are just so many resources out there, obviously. Mm-hmm. But in terms of seeking them out, what ways would you go about recommending them, especially for fathers or men out there that may be on the fence?
About seeking out mental health work? That's a great question. And I think, particularly if you've got someone interested in future relationships or parenting, if they've got a goal, then we can encourage people that this work on themselves will pay off in the end. It will benefit them in any future role, again, as friend, parent, partner. And allowing people to really grasp the idea that I share with people that I don't have the answers. I'm not the expert on anybody else. But in conversation with someone trained, you can uncover insights about yourself where you feel empowered. You feel like you're becoming the expert in how you operate. And that in and of itself is wonderfully empowering. That confidence can, map onto any new role. And so I guess other than that, you can encourage people to just see what they can do to learn about themselves and how they operate and what personality issues got in their way and what they would like to change, maybe to set personal goals and then take a look at those goals and ask themselves what's a platform for achievement of these. It may be that it's mental health. It may be that it's a group. It may be that it's a self-help book. It may be that it's insightful conversations with a friend that can really be honest with them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we don't have a perfect client. Everyone has issues, and understanding that as a lawyer, and if I want to get you to that finish line, nothing would make me happier than a client who's willing to learn, get therapy, whatever it may be, get education. And I can present that all day long to a judge. Someone who a judge looks at and says, okay, they get it. This is a tough time for them, for their kids, and they're willing to learn and adapt, whatever it is, change, modify, get the resources for their kids' sake and for themselves, because you're now presenting an entirely different picture to the court. And it is about what I always say, appearance and presentation. How do you appear and how do you presenting and what are you doing? What is the parenting style you're going to present to the court? I mean, just think about the things that you could have and be equipped with when you present it to a judge and how far better you would present. And the judge would feel really confident about giving you perhaps what you want when you've taken the steps needed other than just saying, this is what I want because I want it. Well, this is what I want because, and here's what I've done to make myself better, to equip myself. I mean, it's like anything that you plan and strategize for. Whether it be, you want to save up for a house. Well, you can say you want a house, but if you don't do the things necessary to get it, you're not going to get the house. So if you want the kids, let's put a plan together. And that could mean employing professionals and educating yourself and whatever it is, learning to co-parent, learning what you need to do with kids who behave and react during custody transfers. And how do you say, what do you say? Because no one knows what to say. Those are the things I think when the client does it, you become a perfect client. And that makes my job much easier.
Oh, yeah. How beneficial does it become for, let's say, a father, how much more communicative with their co-parent? And, what are the benefits is what I'm trying to say among like co-parents?
Yeah. I mean, I think, 90% of the time, what we see is right out of the gate, mom will say, I can't co-parent with them. We can't communicate. We broke down. We're getting divorced because we can't communicate. So therefore, we're already battling not only physical time, but legal time, which is the equal decision-making for the major decisions on health, education, and welfare, which we always tell clients, you've got to go for that we have to have joint legal. You want to continue to be dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can only bolster your case to ensure you get joint legal when you seek the things to kind of disprove what is said by the other side.
Mm-hmm.
That being, you can't communicate. Well, you can say to the judge, well, I'm learning how to communicate in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning to communicate not through email, but picking up the phone, because email can be misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to stop emailing and I'm going to stop texting. And so I've learned that my texts and emails are misinterpreted. So I'm stopping that. I mean, those are things that benefit clients rather than just saying, I've always said, and I keep saying, and I've said it today, he said, she said, you lose 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is, because judges don't have that level of trust in guys because they're not risk takers.
Mm-hmm.
So our job is to take what you're saying and then back it up with independent, viable examples of why your plan is better or good, whatever it may be. So doing these things only better your case. They only give you a better chance of success to get the things that you want to accomplish, specifically legal. I mean, and it spills over into physical time because we can get through, every state has statutes that talk about, which parent is more likely to provide the other with continuing contact or to abide by the schedule. And if our clients can show that they're taking steps to ensure that they're going to do those things, then of course a judge is going to believe it, especially if you bring in an expert outside, say, yeah, he's been seeing me for the last 6 months and the progress is incredible. That is really powerful testimony because it's unbiased, it's independent, and it's therapeutic. Mm-hmm. So.
And I think, the bottom line is that the benefits to this work for the relationship henceforth, particularly when there are kids involved, is the benefits are profound. By and large, every relationship falls apart and there's some kind of ego injury. There's a narcissistic injury, right? And so you've got everybody taking it very personally. This was a threat to their person. And we educate people in the unhelpful thinking styles or the cognitive distortions that they're engaged in. Mm-hmm. And if you can, shed some light on that for someone, then they can begin to call themselves on that all or nothing thinking or jumping to conclusions. And when you can put your own stuff aside, it's still yours, but then you can actually get in somebody else's shoes. And what we're doing then is creating empathy within this family that is transitioning to 2 homes. And the kids, the absolute greatest thing that you can do for your children in this situation is to provide at least a semblance of a united front. Mm-hmm. And by putting your own stuff aside and allowing empathy to seep in, your kids are being bolstered for the ride they have ahead of them.
Yeah. And imagine clients saying, Julie and I, we have differences. We don't agree on a lot of things and we can't get along. But the one thing that I'm ensuring that we can get along about is our kids. It's just powerful testimony when it's believable and you've done something to back it up. Mm-hmm. Then again, that's about the process of planning, the process of preparing with your attorney, whether it's us or someone else. We these seminars we talk about, I always use the word war. You don't go to war without planning. Because it's a mistake, and mistakes will happen when you don't plan. And you don't invest money without learning and planning. You do it blindly, you lose it all. Mm-hmm. We're not all experts in all areas. Yeah. And so it is about preparing and planning and doing the right things, not only for the benefit of your case, but the benefit of your family and your kids, most importantly.
And I think, spending some time looking at yourself and, perhaps creating some new goals for self-improvement, let's say, that allows a person, especially a dad who may have held a traditional role in the family, who may be somewhat removed on the nurturing end of things from his kids. Now you suddenly have 100% of parenting mm-hmm. when you're on point, when kids are with this parent, and you need some support. And that can come in the form of self-reflection and insight, and that empathy will go a long way. Kids are super intuitive, and if somebody's working on themselves, by and large, in my experience, when a dad comes in and says, I want to just learn about myself, mm-hmm. the kids pick up on it, and we don't have the kind of distancing actions that we can see sometimes in these situations. So kids feel safe with both parents, and they feel secure and emotionally nurtured and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Is from like a not only a legal perspective but a mental health perspective, is there necessarily a timetable? Let's say a dad, like the divorce decree goes out, months or years go by, and they go about the mental health stuff, seeking therapy, seeking counseling, and want to revisit their custody or divorce, just in modifying it anyway.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Is there any timetable that prevents them from doing so? And, what?
From the mental health perspective, no. I mean, I think you can begin right away.
Yeah.
And anything is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And so we've had situations like that where the divorce decree points out anger issues, narcissism, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And it is a rude awakening to clients. And they can either, do one of two things: choose to do nothing and everything remains the same, or choose to do something and hope for change. Mm-hmm. And not only with themselves, but perhaps change with their child and their ex and have a better relationship. And there are success stories with that too. But there is really no timetable. I think the sooner the better. Mm-hmm. But everyone's on their own timetable, and you have to be ready. And it's like anything. It could be from mental health to weight loss. Mm-hmm. You can say, I'm going to go on a diet, and you're off of it in 30 days because you're just not ready. Or people can tell you need to lose weight, and if you're not mentally ready to do it, you have to have buy-in. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand that this is for everyone. It's better for both, but there is no real time. I would never put a timetable on it other than your typical restrictions on when you can modify because you have emancipation issues. So in some respects, there is somewhat of a timetable. It's better when your kids are younger to take action and move to modify than it is when they're older, when courts are more likely to look at what the child wants. And realistically, in teenage years, modifications become much less significant in terms of their success. But no, I don't think there's a timetable.
Okay.
And I think what I hear you asking with regards to mental health, I have a lot of adolescent clients who are perhaps in a phase of rejecting one parent or another. And what I share with that parent is that this is not forever. This is a statement. This is resistance to something uncomfortable. And I guarantee you, and all the research supports this is not lifelong. You're the out parent right now. But if you can hang in there, do the work, remain a part of this child's life, I guarantee you the tables will turn because that's why we have two parents. It takes two, and children need both. They need the involvement of both, and it may not be pleasant. It may not be easy, but it can be incredibly gratifying when your 30-year-old has a breakthrough and wants a relationship with you, and you're ready. So that does happen. And so there really is no timeline. There's no restrictions on the mental wellness of rapport building or reshaping or restructuring.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that, from your perspective, that you'd like to make sure that the audience knows?
I think learn through examples. And thing that will always stay with me, we had a case just talking about mental health and its effects in divorce.
Yeah.
Years and years ago when I was starting to practice, had this case where mom had a lot of issues, depression, and decided to treat that herself through alcohol and drugs. And we had a guardian ad litem appointed who had really encouraged her, look, you need to get help. And just to talk about it. And we can progress from there. My mom continued to refuse, and it just got progressively worse, and talking about what its effects are in court. So we're in trial, and we're talking about custody. And I suspected during the third day of trial that there was a break in the trial. And we left, and mom went to the bathroom, came back, and I had suspected she had taken drugs. Her behavior had changed substantially. She looked different. And I went to the guardian and I said, I think she went and snorted cocaine. Just look at her. And she was trying to cope. And he had indicated, well, I said, look, I'm going after her on the stand because it's the only way I can get this judge to understand that she can't control it without help. And she's refusing it. And I did. And she lost custody. That was it. That was the pivotal moment in that trial, was she made a decision to go to the restroom and use drugs, trying to kind of self-medicate in her own way. And the mental health issues, she was just overwhelmed. And our client won. And I mean, that's an example of how quickly things can turn. Things weren't looking great, and mental health exposed itself, not only a drug addiction or drug abuse problem, but they do. And judges are they're looking for something to hang their hat on. And that was just an example of one that always sticks with me. And ultimately, it just never ended well for her, even beyond that. And was just a very glaring moment. There's so many with mental health issues, drug and substance abuse problems, where people refuse to seek help and assistance or just learn about how to deal with it.
Okay.
And I think, too, a reminder to people that, dads in particular, that this is a journey, and the more open they can be to learning from their environment, whether that's asking for advice or seeking counsel of their legal team, or going for insight-oriented therapy, the better person that they will become. And we have our entire lives to continue that learning process, and no one expects them to have the answers and to get it right. But the more we can put our stuff out of the way, the richer the experience, because, you can be right, and at what cost? And so allowing people to kind of deal with their stuff, their whatever it is, need to control, need to win, whatever that looks like, allowing people to just kind of process through that, they will turn over stones that they didn't see before, and that will add to their growth as humans.
Absolutely.
And the last thing I think I would say is I think about, you may be in the middle of divorce or right at the beginning, you retain counsel, and there are really two types of clients. Clients that control their lawyers, and the lawyers allow it, and lawyers that control the client. And it sounds harsh, but you want the lawyer that controls the client, because you want the lawyer, the only way they can do an effective job is to guide you, and not necessarily force you to do things. But I say control being that, look, I'm going to say, here's the behavior that I think is not going to work for me or the court, and I can't effectively represent you. You're ultimately going to make the decisions. But there are lawyers that just do everything that the client says without counsel, and you want to avoid that. You want to avoid the lawyers that are controlled by their clients 100% of the time, because ultimately, at the end of the day, you may think you won, but a year later, 5 years later, you're going to realize that you didn't. And it is our job, control's a hard word, but it is to keep contained and to make sure you understand, the best case and the worst case and the things that you need to be doing. So that's when you're looking for a lawyer, whether you have one, find one that will truly counsel you along the way, provide you with the resources and the connections that you need, but also tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. And if you've got issues that we identify that may be struggling emotionally, then we're going to guide you in the right direction. That lawyer you need to find that will guide you to the appropriate help, not only for yourself, but for the good of the case. Because divorce, no one wins. It's degrees of losing, because you walk away with less than what you had. There's no way. You can call it a win, but it is a loss. And everyone loses, including the kids, because they're spending less time with a parent, period. It paints a pessimistic picture, but it's a realistic picture. And so you want a lawyer who will straight talk you and tell you exactly the way it's going to be. There are victories, but it can't be a win. You know what I mean? And there are victories within a loss, and we can find those. And that's what I think guys need to find along the way, lawyers that can do that for them. And that's what I mean by control clients. That is guiding them appropriately. And you're paying a lot of money. You don't want someone to just be what you tell them to do.
Okay.
Right. Find someone you trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Develop that therapeutic alliance.
Yep.
And then take the coaching.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you both so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Make sure to check out all of our articles and content at mensdivorce.com and CordellCordell.com. Check us out on iTunes, and make sure to download the Men's Divorce Source app. On behalf of Erica and Scott, I'm Dan Pierce, online editor at mensdivorce.com. I thank you all for listening, and have a great day, everyone.